Have you ever wondered why World War I, one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, began in the first place? What were the driving forces that led nations to engage in such a devastating war? Was it a single event, a culmination of tensions, or a complex mix of both? These are questions that have puzzled historians for over a century. It's time to delve deep into the past and seek answers. Follow along as we unravel the complex tapestry of events that led to the Great War. The first domino to fall was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in June 1914. This single event, as seemingly isolated and unexpected as it was, ignited the fuse that would lead to the outbreak of the First World War. The Archduke and his wife, Sophie, were in the city of Sarajevo, Bosnia, on a goodwill mission. The couple was tragically shot dead by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb nationalist, during their procession through the city. This assassination created shockwaves that rippled throughout the entire continent of Europe, stirring up a hornet's nest of age-old rivalries, simmering tensions, and intricate alliances. Austria-Hungary, who had annexed Bosnia just 6 years prior, viewed the assassination as a direct affront by Serbia. They saw this as an opportune moment to assert their dominance and issued an ultimatum to Serbia. The ultimatum was harsh, almost designed to be rejected. It demanded, among other things, that Austrian authorities be allowed to operate within Serbia to suppress anti-Austrian movements. Serbia, backed by Russia, rejected part of the ultimatum, and this was the spark that lit the powder keg. In the days and weeks that followed, a complex web of alliances was invoked. The major European powers, bound by treaties to their allies, found themselves drawn into a confrontation that none had truly wanted. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, leading Russia to mobilize in defense of its Slavic ally. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia. France, bound by treaty to Russia, found itself at war with Germany and, by extension, Austria-Hungary. This series of diplomatic confrontations was like a row of dominoes. Once the first piece was pushed, the rest followed in quick succession. Each nation, bound by alliances and driven by nationalistic fervor, found themselves on a path to war. It was a path from which there was no turning back. This tragic event set the stage for a war that would change the world forever. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the spark that ignited the flame of war, a war whose effects would be felt for generations to come. By August 1914, the world was in the grip of war. The once peaceful nations were now divided into two major blocs: the Allied powers, led by the United Kingdom, France and Russia, and the Central Powers, primarily composed of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. As the war unfolded, countries declared their allegiances, and the world map became a chessboard of strategic alliances and antagonisms. The Allies sought to protect their territories and uphold the balance of power, while the Central Powers aimed to expand their influence and territories across Europe and beyond. The war was not confined to a single theater. It stretched from the trenches of the Western Front to the vast expanses of the Eastern Front, from the deserts of the Middle East to the waters of the Atlantic. Each front bore witness to significant battles and turning points that shaped the course of the conflict. On the Western Front, the First Battle of the Marne in September 1914 marked a significant turning point. The Allies halted the German advance into France, setting the stage for a grueling stalemate that would last for 4 long years. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Battle of Tannenberg saw the German forces decimate the Russian Second Army, shaking the confidence of the Tsar and setting the stage for the eventual Russian withdrawal from the war. As the war raged on, new fronts opened up. The Gallipoli campaign in 1915 saw a failed Allied attempt to control the sea route from Europe to Russia. The Battle of Jutland in 1916 was the war's largest naval battle, which, despite its inconclusive outcome, confirmed British naval dominance and isolated Germany. The war was not just a series of battles and campaigns. It was a global conflict that impacted millions of lives, transforming societies and reshaping the world order. Each battle, each decision, each alliance was a thread in the larger tapestry of the war. The war raged on, bringing devastation and loss on a scale never seen before. This was not just a war between nations. It was a global cataclysm that forever changed the face of the world. In 1918, after 4 long years of conflict, the war was nearing its end. The world had been holding its breath, waiting for the moment when peace would return. But before that could happen, a series of pivotal events had to take place. The United States, having maintained a stance of neutrality for much of the war, finally entered the fray in April of 1917. Their involvement marked a significant shift in the war's dynamics. The infusion of fresh troops and resources into the Allied forces brought a much-needed boost to their morale and capabilities. Meanwhile, on the battlefields, the final offensives were being launched. The 100 Days Offensive, led by the Allies, was a series of attacks against the Central Powers that began in August 1918. The Central Powers were pushed back, losing ground and resources at an alarming rate. The offensive was a decisive blow that led to the collapse of the Central Powers' resistance. While the battles raged on, behind closed doors, negotiations were underway. Diplomats from all sides were working tirelessly to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Their efforts culminated in the signing of the Armistice of Compiègne on November 11, 1918. This agreement effectively ended the fighting on the Western Front, but the armistice was more than just an end to the fighting. It was a promise of a new beginning, a commitment to peace and reconciliation. It marked the start of a period of intense negotiation and treaty-making, which would reshape the world's political landscape. The end of the war was met with a mix of relief, joy, and sorrow. Relief for the end of the bloodshed, joy for the return of peace, and sorrow for the countless lives lost and the devastation left in the war's wake. And so, after 4 long years of unprecedented destruction and loss, the war was finally over. The world was forever changed, marked by the scars of conflict, but also by the hope of a better future. On November 11, 1918, the guns finally fell silent. World War I was a defining moment in human history. It marked the culmination of simmering tensions, nationalistic fervor, and intricate alliances, all of which coalesced into a conflict that spanned continents and forever altered the course of our shared narrative. We dove into the causes that lit the spark of war, a complex web of political, economic, and social factors that pushed nations over the edge into a battle that would last 4 long and brutal years. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria served as the catalyst, but the roots of this conflict ran far deeper, entwined in the very fabric of societies across the globe. We journeyed through the unfolding of the war, a grisly tableau of trench warfare, technological advancements, and human resilience. We saw how the tide turned with the entrance of new players and the exhaustion of old ones, shaping the ebb and flow of a war that seemed at times unending. And finally, we explored the war's conclusion, a moment of relief marred by the staggering loss of life and the seeds of future conflicts sown in the soil of the Versailles Treaty. World War I was more than a war. It was a seismic shift in our global landscape. It's a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of global conflict and the importance of striving for peace.